Meet me. Welcome back to another Squirrely Hero review. I was going to do ML Kawazu first, but people keep saying Straze, Straze, however you say it. So we're going to review him first. Full disclaimer, I'm recording this review within a week of when he came out, so, builds might change, things like that. I'm mostly going to be trying him pure cleave, but I'm sure you can run him bruiserish as well. So, anyways, as always, we're going to go over his skills, his builds. We'll do a quick arena showcase and figure out where he works well, where he doesn't, and then we'll do a quick summary. So let's get started. All right, so first let's talk about his abilities. So his S1, I always say it's basic. It is pretty basic. It has no debuffs or anything. There's no special mechanic. The only thing it really has on is the fact that he has a 20% CR push. Again, that typically is just Smilegate's way of saying you can get by with a little less speed, assuming that you have sustain because you have a way of boosting yourself. Nothing too special. His S2, however, is pretty cool. It attacks all enemies and dispels 2 buffs. And in my limited testing, it actually does pretty solid damage. Hugely, it ignores effect resistance of any targets with attack lower than the caster's attack, which, unless you're running him like anti-cleave or something, and you build him right, in most cases that will be everybody on the other team. And it does more damage with the less enemies there are. And if you soul burn it, you can basically spam it every single turn, which is pretty crazy, and I wonder if he'd be strong against things like Maid and stuff. A guaranteed 2 buff strip, that is no joke. That is a very powerful ability. Now, of course, Star Extinction. This is his amazing ability where he destroys literal planets. It penetrates defense of the target with the highest max health by 30%, but if he has a lot more attack than the penetration target's attack, basically whoever has the most HP, then he can def pen up to 100%. On top of that, it grants invincibility to himself for 1 turn to give him a little bit of survivability after he uses this. But basically this move is a guaranteed kill on whatever has the most HP. Doesn't matter if it's a Crow or a 30k HP FCC. If you have attack buff and, maybe possibly even without attack buff depending on your stats, you will kill them, which is pretty crazy if you think about it. So those are his abilities. Let's move on to the builds. So how do you build Straze? Probably not like the one I have shown here. So I literally swapped him to my LQC's gear because I think their roles are going to be kind of similar, although they have different gearing requirements. So in terms of Straze's gear, I honestly don't know how I'm supposed to say it, so I'm just going to keep saying them both. I think you're going to want to run him a little faster. I feel like his role is similar to a follow-up OpSig or an LQC. Like, you put them behind a Gpurg, they get the attack buff, and then they one-shot something, right? So you're probably going to want Straze around like 230 speed with around 4k attack, and probably because he hits tanks so hard, like 225 crit damage is more than enough if you could hit those stats with attack buff. And I'm pretty sure that's how most people will run him. And, we're going to cleave for the arena showcase, but I actually don't consider him a very strong cleave unit. I know a lot of people are saying, oh, his damage is crazy, he's the god of cleave. I'll try and show you why I don't think that highly of him for cleave. And I've gone up against a lot of top cleavers like Light and Snow and all these people. And I just feel like with their playstyle, Straze doesn't actually bring much to the table for them, right? Because top cleavers always pre-ban FCC anyway, and if you draft any other knight other than maybe Troublemaker, they really don't care. They're just going to let it through and blow up the rest of your team, and then your Crow can horse 1 person, or your Troublemaker will just stand there looking at them. It doesn't really matter, right? Your whole team is dead. And Straze doesn't really do all that much in a cleave opener, outside of killing the person with the highest HP, which to a cleaver, if it's anything but FCC, is the lowest risk threat on the other side to them. So my honest opinion is that, cleavers might not act like true top tier cleavers. I don't know how much they'll actually care about Straze. Mine's on portrait. I feel like, again, this is just for damage, but realistically, they'll probably be on something like Draco Plate. If somehow, people figure out that a Bruiser Straze works, maybe even Sigurd Scythe, because you could spam the S2, it's AoE, ignores effect resist, and, probably heals them a lot. But, his base defensive stats are pretty awful. Like, this is my LQC's gear. Granted, my LQC wasn't a super tanky one, but he is a very squishy hero. Granted, he has the invincibility on his S3 for some survivability, but unless you give him some serious bulky gear, he is going to be pretty susceptible to being focused down, in my opinion. So anyway, that's my opinion on his builds. I'm going to say that the most general build will probably be around 4k attack, 225 to 240 speed, 100% crit, 200 to 250 crit damage. Some people might even want to make a really fast Straze, but I don't think he'll be like a pure, DPS cleaver. But anyways, let's move on to the showcase. We'll start with some highlights, and then we'll go on to a more honest assessment. Alright, so let's try cleaving with this bad boy. We're just going to use our normal cleave team and just replace, our J-Key/Obsig with Straze. And we all know what's going to happen, right? We've all seen Straze's damage, and mine is over 5k attack. I'm assuming LR Crow has the most HP, no defense break. 100% he's dead, right? He's not going to survive. We split the planets in half. 35,000 damage, no defense break. So I honestly consider him like very similar to Obsig, right? Where if the condition is right, basically he does unsurvivable damage. There's no tank that could survive that. There just isn't. So, clearly it worked, but honestly, like, I could have also J-Key saved this team. This is just a very strong cleaving core to begin with. We'll boost up Arby here. And, yeah. So he gets that job done, but one thing I want you to note very early on is that outside of the LR Crow, the rest of the team didn't really take that much damage. Now, granted, my Straze has no real molas into his S3. I only put 2 into it, but it's a very important thing to note. So, obviously this is over, so let's move on to another one. Alright, this time let's hit an FCC team. Obviously we know FCC's the tankiest opening night in the game. And again, like, there's just no way to survive this. Like, look, there's no setup required. He's a lot like Obsig. If the condition is met, basically he kills them in one shot 100% of the time. See how hard we hit FCC. We hit the Gpurg, actually, but he freaking exploded. I guess that wasn't a speedy Gpurg. So whatever, we'll kill Landy here. Then we'll do this. And it's over. But again, that looked fine, but again, I could have used pretty much a lot of other cleavers to accomplish the same thing. I know everyone's saying, like, Straze is busted. I don't think he's busted. So let's move on to another example, and I'll try and show you why. Alright, so for full disclosure, now that we saw the cool showcase, let's see, like, a comparison, because some people are telling me he's the greatest cleaver in the game, and I don't know if I agree. So what we're going to do is we're going to use this Straze team, and then we're just going to replace it with another classic cleaver like Obsig or, J-Key or something. We'll use Obsig since it's an FCC team. And watch, like, the thing about this is Straze doesn't actually hit the other people all that hard, except for the one with highest HP, right? So we know here that FCC is going to die, right? But then the rest of the cleave is kind of awkward. Now, granted, you can, make a different team that makes more sense with Straze, but, like, you could do that with any hero, so that's not really a great defense. So now Ruel gets pushed up. The FCC gets revived, and at this point I'm kind of just, I lose, right? It's over. There's really nothing I could do. The carrot's gonna blow me up. Oh, actually we gab, so maybe we'll still win? I don't know. We'll find out. But here carrot goes. We get roasted. Arby, actually my whole team is probably going to die. Luckily Straze has invincibility, but we're going to come back into a skill... I'm actually going to try here too, so let's remove the skill nullifiers. Okay. Cdom dies. Ruel heals. Arby's gonna die here. And what's the best thing to do here? Let's do this. Okay. And then, what? Do we soul burn Straze? Sure. Let's soul burn Straze. Strip off that carrot. But, it's irrelevant. We can't win from here, right? We just kind of lose. Is there any recovering from this? I don't think so. We gab. And yeah, that's a loss. Alright, so we lose here. That's fine. Now let's just show why, you know, a lot of times other cleavers will just be a lot more clean. I'm gonna use literally the exact same team and just slot in something like OP Sig. Let's buy our friendship thingies. And even J Kisei here, I think, would be better if you have a strong enough Kisei to get through an FCC. Right now, mine might not be because I barely use her. But here, let's compare that last run to something like this. Like, Ruel is not going to get a turn. Ruel explodes. Then we do this. Boop. And we're going to strip them and push them back. Push up our C-Dom. C-Dom goes, like, doesn't this just look a lot more clean? Like, I think people are overvaluing the fact that Straze can guaranteed one-shot, like, whatever has the highest HP. But you can't really tell me that that last one was better than this one. Like, here, it was a guaranteed win. So, I mean, Straze is a lot of fun, and I think he has that wow factor of seeing those giant numbers and the fact that that planet splitting animation is so cool. But in terms of just straight cleaving, honestly, I think, you know, a lot of times there are better options. Like, I don't think he's the end-all be-all of cleaving. So let's move on. Alright, so those first few were for that cleaving build, which I don't think is going to be very viable. I actually don't think he's a great cleaver. But I think this is going to be the more typical build. So this is the second build that I showed, kind of the more much lower attack with a decent amount of speed as a Gpurg follow-up. I think this is the kind of Straze that will most likely start making its rounds in RTA. So let's test this out in regular arena. So first we'll give Straze the attack buff. And we're going to see, with only 4k attack and 205 crit damage, how much damage Straze can do to this FCC. Is it enough? I have a feeling it is, with his crazy multis. Yep, see, so you don't really need to have that much offensive stats. It's just going to overcap his damage and be a complete waste. So, yeah, I think this is going to be the more typical build. Like, just enough HP and defense to survive the first hit or two until he can drop DS3 and completely nullify the other team. So I think that build works completely fine. I think this is the build that's going to be popular in RTA, and I think this build might actually be quite strong. Whereas that pure cleave build, I mean, I'm sure some people will be able to make it work. I just feel that, you know, in terms of cleave, in most cases, there probably are going to be better options to draft than Straze, no matter how cool his animations are. And look at that strip. The strip is really killer. So anyways, that's it for the arena showcase. Let's move on to the summary. Alright, so as always, let's summarize. Is Straze good? Yeah, I think so. I think so. But again, this is a very early review, and it comes with disclaimers. I could be completely wrong. I just want to be, you know, I'm always about being transparent. So, here are my initial impressions of him so far. As a cleaver, honestly, a lot of people are telling me he's so great. I don't think he's that great of a cleaver. Again, I've versed the best cleavers in the world, and I just don't see why they would pick him over some of the other common things that they do like using already, like Politis Flan with like Green Vildred or Pavel, things like that. Like, they're going to blow you up anyway. Their concern was never one-shotting your tankiest unit. If it's any, they pre-ban FCC and any other tanky unit in the game, save Troublemaker, they really don't care about. So for cleavers, I don't really think he's all that important, to be completely honest. But we'll see. I could be completely wrong. We'll see. I think the way most people will use him and where he might be really strong is kind of like a mid-tier speed OPSIG slash LQC. So for those of you not familiar with the RTA meta, a lot of people ran OPSIG and like LQC behind Gpurges, right? Because they only really need to survive turn one. And if you had anything that gives your team a barrier, and OPSIG would be on Guiding Light, basically Gpurge attack buffs them. And if you don't ban the OPSIG or the LQC, they one-shot your team when their turn is up, right? So I think Straze will be very similar because, you know, he's not a particularly tanky hero, but you could probably give him just enough tank to survive turn one. So if he's behind an attack buffer and you're drafting like a typical like Knight Soulweaver 2 DPS comp and you can't realistically one-shot Straze on turn one, then as soon as he goes up, he annihilates someone on your team, right? So I feel like that's how most people will probably utilize Straze, like behind a DN or a Gpurge. And in that case, he might become a must ban depending on how you drafted, right? Because once he gets up, even if he barely survived, he'll one shot whatever your knight is, or possibly your soul weaver if that's your tankiest unit, and then he's invincible. And if your team has no strips, you really have no way of dealing with him, right? And his S2 is pretty toxic. It's going to dispel 2 buffs and can't be resisted. That's pretty nuts. So that is my prediction. We'll find out if I'm completely wrong. Maybe I'm completely wrong. I feel like that's how most people will probably utilize Straze, Strebe in the upper echelons of RTA. But we'll see. If you guys follow Light or something, maybe he's dominating people with Straze. But honestly, I mean, he could probably dominate with anything, to be honest. But to be honest, I just don't see how well he fits into a pure cleave team. So I guess we have to give ratings, right? Even though I haven't used him in a lot of this content. So Guild Wars offense, I'm just going to give him an A because I feel like, you can use any hero like this, like OPSIG works fine in Guild Wars. You can't use it on every offense, right? But basically, he's a hero that if you run him with Oxlots, it's an immediate 3v2, right? Because you'll wipe out one unit, and then, depending on how much damage you did, you could just wipe out the other one. Just another basic cleave opener hero. It's going to be fine. Guild Wars defense, I'm going to predict it's an F. There's probably no reason to use him on Guild Wars defense. Arena offense, I'm going to give him a B+, because honestly, I just think other cleavers just get it done so much more cleanly. Like I've kind of shown, I've seen some other showcases where people run him with a speed OPSIG. Again, you could do that, but I just don't think it's that realistic. Why? There's so many older cleaves that still work as long as they're not running Politis. I don't really see the point. But arena defense, I think, again, it's just going to be an F, same as Guild Wars defense. These are not the kind of heroes you want on a defense team. And an RTA, it's a big question mark, right? My initial impression, based on what I've seen, is B+, if you run that build that I predict, that Gpurge follow-up build. But again, I could be completely wrong. I don't want to come here and say that I know because I have literally used him in RTA and seen him in RTA a grand total of 0 times so far. But you guys keep pressuring me to do this review, so I'm doing it. And maybe I'll do a follow-up after I have time to actually playtest him. But you guys rushed me for this one. You guys rushed me because I know you're all itching to summon and you wanted my take on it. So that's my opinion on Straze. If you've playtested and want to correct anything that I said or you think I'm completely wrong, I don't care. Feel free to put in the comment section below. And if you have any great ideas, I'll test them out as well. But it's just my impressions based on what I've seen. So anyways, thanks for watching. Till next time, boys. Peace out.